Hey, what's going on, guys? Alex here with TFL Bike. I'm here in Newport Beach, California with the all-new 2022 Honda Navi. And in this video, we're gonna get it out on the road, go through all the details. Let's jump into the full review of this all-new Honda Minimoto. So basically what we have here is a scooter powertrain, but inside of a motorcycle chassis. And Honda's really targeting beginner riders with this. It's really affordable and really easy to ride because there's no gears to shift through and no clutch lever. But I also think it would be pretty appealing for somebody who needs a pit bike or somebody who wants a bike to take camping, or even just as a second motorcycle to run some errands on when you don't feel like bringing out the big bike. So you have a 109cc engine, but it has a CVT transmission, no gears to shift through, no clutch lever. It's just twist and go. But unlike a scooter, you actually step over this bike. It doesn't have a pass-through design like many of Honda's scooters, so it looks a little more like a motorcycle. It looks really similar to the Grom.
All right, so here we are on the Honda Navi, and we've got quite the crew with us today, all mobbing out on these Minimotos. So let's get this thing out on the road and talk about what it's like to ride. Clearly, this is an extremely easy bike to ride. Honda wanted something beginner friendly, and that's what this is. It's easy to ride. You've got no clutch, no gears to shift through, so less to think about for a new rider. They can just focus on accelerating and braking and steering. But also for someone that's a little more experienced, it's really nice not having a clutch on a little bike like this. This has a nice flat section right here in front of my legs. Maybe put a little pizza box there, hold it down with your left hand, and you can ride this bike one-handed. Of course, you gotta move up here for turn signals and the horn and everything, but you can operate most of the main controls of this bike just using your right foot and your right hand, which is pretty awesome. As far as power goes, just riding it around town, this is a 50-mile-an-hour road, and sure, it takes us some time to get up to 50, doing about 40 right now, 45, 50. It's able to keep up with traffic just fine, maintain the speed limit. It's doing just fine. For what this is, I don't think it needs to be much faster. And then as far as handling goes, you know, this is a Honda Minimoto, so it's gonna handle pretty similarly to the rest of those motorcycles. It's got really tiny wheels, so the turning is sharp. You can make U-turns in a really small confined space. It's all good. And then as far as comfort goes, it's a really comfortable bike. I do like that it's got a motorcycle design, so you can grip your legs to the tank. I really hate when motorcycles don't have a good spot for you to grip your legs to, and this one has a good spot.
The general design is very Grom-like. That's very apparent in the headlight up front, but also these side panels resemble the new Grom quite a bit. And I think it's a pretty good looking bike. This one obviously is in bright Honda red, but it comes in 4 colors, also a high-vis green, a darker army green, and then kind of an army brown too, or a tan desert sort of color. And I kind of made fun of that color when I first saw it in the original video we put up on this bike, but I gotta say, it's grown on me, and it's probably my favorite color now. Pretty basic instrumentation, just an analog speedometer there, analog fuel gauge, at least we have a fuel gauge though, and then a couple of dummy lights. Up here we've got the kill switch and the starter button. Because this doesn't have a clutch, it operates like a scooter where you have to pull in the brake in order to start it. And then a couple other things you don't see on too many motorcycles these days. This is carbureted, so we have a choke lever built in to the handlebar right here, and also a huge knob for the fuel petcock right there, so you don't need to, you know, take your gloves off and fumble under the bike to adjust that stuff. It's all super easy to access. There's also a Kickstarter here on the left side of the bike, which is needed in case the battery goes dead. You can't bump start a CVT, so glad to see you have that on there. And I've got the bike popped up on the center stand right here, but there's also a side stand. So you've got both options there, and pretty cool that we have a side stand. This bike has been available overseas for a few years now, and the international model only gets a center stand, but here in the US, both a center stand and a side stand. 10-inch wheel on the rear here, and moving up to the front, we have a 12-inch wheel. So different size wheels, front and back, and they're basically steelies. So it does look a little bit like a budget part, except for on the nut brown version. I think these black steel wheels on the nut brown Navi looks like a military bike almost. It reminds me of Tommy's old Gladiator.
It is just super fun mobbing around with a big group all on matching mini motos. And that's something to think about because of the price. $1,800 for this bike. And you know, you could buy almost 2 of these for the price of a Grom. You could buy a bunch of these for the price of a full-size motorcycle. This is a super comfortable bike too. I am very upright. My feet are pretty much right below me. The pegs are a little more forward set than they are on the Grom and the Monkey. Now, while this is super fun and super practical, it's not going to be quite the stunt bike that something like a Grom is. You know, just the fact that you don't have a clutch, you have a little less power. If you're into doing tricks on motorcycles, the Grom is definitely the better bike. This bike has a 0.9 gallon fuel tank, which sounds pretty puny, but it's actually not too bad considering this does over 100 miles per gallon according to Honda. So should get about 100-mile range out of it, if not a little bit more. And I think that's just fine. I don't think you're going to be doing too many 100-mile trips on this. This guy just gave us the thumbs up right here. He's digging it. So there you go, full-size KTM approves of the Honda Mini Motos.
This key is used for a ton of different things on this bike. So locking fuel door. Moving down here, we also have this Navi branded storage box. And it's a pretty decent size. I've got a drawstring bag in here right now with a couple snacks, but it goes pretty deep. And it even has a little gasket, so it should keep most of your stuff dry. And some of you were asking about this because the international model doesn't come with this box, but for the US, all Navis are gonna come standard with this box. And then there's one more keyhole back here towards the back of the bike, and that is going to be for the seat. So turn the key there, you can then pick the whole seat up, just like that. And you've got a little more storage down in here with some documentation as well as a toolkit. And you could probably use a little bit of this area for storage if you really wanted to. Now, because this has a CVT, you need a parking brake since you can't leave it in gear when you're parked on a hill. So that's exactly what this lever is right here. You just pull that in all the way and then pull this little bracket back. That'll click in place, and now the bike is basically in park. And then when you're ready to go, just squeeze it in, it'll release, and you're good to go. Also, this bike has rear seat foot pegs, which is awesome. A lot of the other Honda Mini Motos don't have any passenger accommodations, and this bike does, which is super cool. You can bring a friend along with you, and there's even a grab handle on the back. That's for getting the bike up onto the center stand, but it also makes for a good spot for a passenger to hold on to. The wet weight on this motorcycle is 236 pounds, and when I first heard that figure, I thought it sounded a little bit heavy, but now that I'm actually on the machine, I've been riding it all morning, it feels incredibly light. It feels like there's basically nothing here. Seat height is 30.1 inches, so just a tad lower than the Grom, but it's really easy to get my feet down on the ground, obviously. I'm 5'10", but people much shorter than me should really have no issues whatsoever, and the seat even tapers as it gets closer to the front, which again makes it easier for a new rider to get their feet down on the ground.
This is where I feel pretty at home on this bike. Cruising through a little beach town, going 15 miles an hour, not worrying about the clutch while I just kind of twist the throttle, look around, do a little people watching, look at all these stores and restaurants around here. The other great part about a bike this small is how easy it is to park. I could park right there, I could park right there, I could park right there. Could put this thing anywhere. And we are actually doing that. We're just lining them up here on the side of the road to go get some lunch. And they're small enough that Honda seems to think we could just leave them right here. I'm not gonna argue with it. Grab the key and let's go. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention too. Steering lock isn't right here on the ignition. You actually gotta take the key out, put it in right here, lock the forks. Now you're good to go. I wish it was right here because then I would actually use it every time. And I think it being down here, I would get lazy a lot of the times and not even bother locking it, but there you have it. All right, here's the full lineup of Honda Minimotos. We're missing a few, no Trail, no Ruckus, but I wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of the size of this machine next to the rest of the Minimotos. So here's the Navi, Grom right behind that. Really, really similar in size. The Grom might be a little bit taller in terms of seat height by about an inch or two, but it's really, really close. Moving along to the Monkey. Super Cub's got a much higher seat, a little more of a full-size machine. These definitely look smaller scale, but there you go. Just wanted to kind of put it next to the rest of the Minimoto lineup so you could get a feel for the size. Now, the customization scene has always been huge for Minimotos, and I hope it takes off for the Navi. And there's a few examples of what might be possible here. So first of all, Vance and Hines brought out this version of the bike. Obviously has a Vance & Hines pipe on the back of it. Man in the Box also brought this bike, and they're pretty well known in the Minimoto scene because they make a lot of Grom, Ruckus, and Monkey parts. They brought this bike, which actually has a kicker sound system built into it. You can see the control panel up there for it, and they might end up selling this part in the future, so pretty cool there. Yoshi pipe on the back. They also fitted it with a bigger rear tire, and check out the clearance there. It's almost non-existent how close or how much clearance there is there. That tire is so close. And then lastly, an Olin shock on the back, and that shock is probably worth about the same amount as this bike in stock form. One more thing I forgot to mention, actually. Pretty cool seat up here. They shaved the seat down a little bit to make this hump and really separate the rider and passenger areas. And then lastly, we've got this one done by Steady Garage. They're also pretty well known in the Minimoto scene for the same reasons, with the Ruckus, the Grom, and the Monkey. And this is kind of a Tron-inspired build. They went all out with this, so I'm gonna miss a bunch of details on this, but a few things that are popping out to me. This bubble visor on the front that they're using to guard the headlight, pretty cool. The front end's been dropped, so less travel, and that just gives it a really cool look. It's also been stretched a little bit. Different wheel and tire setup, looks really cool. Crazy exhaust on the side of this one, also by Vance & Hines. And of course, all this Tron-inspired lighting here. Carbon fiber seat, clip-ons, new instrumentation there, and just lots of cool light-up parts to show off what this bike is. So very well done by all these companies. All right, check this out. We are at Newport Beach, about to get on the ferry. This feels a little weird, riding a motorcycle down a dock out to the water, but we're doing it. And just like that, we're moving. How many we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Navis on a boat. Didn't expect that to happen today. Got the Duke of DC lined up next to me, and he doesn't know it yet, but we're racing. Oh, I got him. I got him. I got him. Oh yeah. Two small complaints with this bike, and they're two things that are pretty easy for me to forget about, especially when you consider the price of this machine, which is $1,800. The first is that this is a carbureted motorcycle, and I'm sure a lot of us would have loved to see fuel injection, especially those of us that live in higher elevations, but that would have made this much more expensive, and I'm totally fine with the fact that it's carbureted. The second thing is the brakes. This has drum brakes front and rear, which I think is just fine. This isn't a performance machine. The brakes work just fine. They bring you down to a stop. What I don't love is that they're linked. So if you pull this lever by your hand, it actuates both front and rear brakes, and same thing with the pedal down here. You push that, actuates both brakes. And I get where that makes sense for a beginner rider. It's way harder to lock up the tires if you have linked brakes. But I wish the rear brake was individual, because I would love to skid out the back tire coming to a stop. On a bike like this that kind of feels like a toy, I want to have some fun with it. So I think I'd be way happier if they kept the linked brake up on the handlebar for beginner riders, but left the rear pedal as an individual brake just for the rear. I am super impressed with this Honda Navi, I must say. It's really comfortable, it's super practical. I love the fact that my left hand is freed up to hold something if I need to. It's really great for beginner riders, it's super easy to use, but most importantly, it's affordable. Not only in the price of the bike, but also insurance, filling it up with fuel. This is just a cheap vehicle to run. The MSRP on this bike is $1,800, which is impressive. It's really impressive that Honda was able to get the price that low. Part of the reason is this Navi is built in Mexico, and this comes in cheaper than the Ruckus and the Metropolitan and the Grom, and a lot of those bikes are built in Japan and Thailand. So just the fact that Honda doesn't have to ship this across the world to get it to the States brings the price point down. It doesn't feel like Honda half-assed this bike at all. It still feels like a Honda even at that price point. And I think that Honda is going to sell a ton of these at $1,800, and I hope they do, because the more riders the better. That's just going to lead to better motorcycles for all of us. So making something like this that's super approachable for a new rider is great. And you know, this is the same size as a Grom, and it's almost as quick as a Grom. Maybe not in terms of acceleration, but definitely in terms of top speed. And it's fun. I'm having a blast riding around with this crew today. Sure, it might not be quite as fun if you're an experienced rider and you're by yourself, but put a whole bunch of these together, it's a hoot. For $1,800, it's really hard to argue with this bike. It's the cheapest motorcycle Honda makes now, and by a pretty good margin.
So there you have it, the all-new 2022 Honda Navi. For $1,800, I really think it's pretty hard to pick out anything wrong with this bike, and I think it would be a great first bike for somebody who's maybe a little bit timid about getting on a motorcycle and wants to focus on learning how to accelerate, brake, and counter steer and stay out of the way of traffic before they jump on, you know, a motorcycle where they have to worry about clutching and shifting gears. So really good option for someone like that. I think it's also going to be really great for someone as their second bike maybe, who wants, you know, something to just run around town on, pick up some groceries or some stuff from the store, maybe take it camping with them. Really great option for that because it's so affordable and just cheap to run. So let me know what your thoughts are on this new Navi down in the comments below. It's definitely a blast. I think maybe not quite as fun as something like a Grom if you really know what you're doing, especially when you're all by yourself on the road, but I still had a lot of fun riding it, and I'm glad it exists because the world needs more affordable motorcycles if we want motorcycling to live on. So you got to start somewhere. Great option for someone as their first bike. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will catch you in the next video.